Hi, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is our chart lesson for Monday, March 5th, and it just wasn't much happening today. There was a very nice sell-off at the opening, right down through here, and there was a chance to take a couple of more shorts before we kind of bottomed out along 13.59 and a quarter or so. You really probably could have had this down here. But you can see we had a lot more touches right across that line, and that pretty much was what I would call the support. We had a failed break lower there and a failed break lower there, and a couple of one-tick breaks lower, but that pretty much was holding prices for the most of the day. And then up here at around 1367 area was holding the highs, and it's just more of the same. And I get a lot of messages from people. They're looking for trends. They're getting trends off both. And you could see you could have drawn trend lines off this high down through here or off this low. And yeah, you can get some little temporary trend lines. If you'd drawn one off the low, you probably would have had one like that right there. And you see it still worked. Prices broke the trend line right here. Then we had two legs up to a new high, and then prices sold off. But even if you didn't have that, you still should have seen this double top across here and been expecting a possible um, short on a failed break lower there, and you could have gone short. Really, right in here was the better place, maybe, and if not there, definitely below this bar right here when prices broke low. We did have that doji first, but you may not have had that on your chart, and so coming off that high was a pretty good short. It's not the greatest or easiest to see setup. The only thing you really had going in your favor was you had the failed break higher, and then you had two tests of that. You had this test of that area with that bar, and then a test of it again with that bar, and neither one of them could go above it or even close on it. So that was a good sign that prices were weak, and you do see these two legs up here, and so that was a nice sell-off. But really, it was easier to find this trend line, and you see, and it came into play. And then prices broke it right here, then sold off to a new low, tried to go lower a few more times, and it just couldn't work lower. So what happens when prices can't work lower? They start working higher, and that's what happened. And there were a couple of entries down here possibly, but really all through here, it's just not much. It's just not worth it's not worth the risk when you get all these overlapping bars and dojis. And the only reason this was a pretty good trade, but you had to wait all day to get it. Actually, you could have gone long right here. That's a nice rejection bar coming out of there, and you see prices did work back to the high. So that trade was pretty predictable for at least a scalp. But when we tested this again and the same thing happened, that was a pretty good place to go long. And you can see that trade would have worked as well. And there's others in here that would have worked. The failed break lower would have worked. You could have scalped off that. But it's just not hardly worth it when you get into all these bars and these overlap like right in here. It's better just to sit tight and wait and see what happens. This trade was okay because we were coming off this down sloping trend line. We'd already tested that line like twice after we, got it there. That was another test. Prices turned down. That was good enough for a scalp. It tested again right there. So you could have gone short again right there as well, and that one would have worked. And then this was the first break of the trend line. So again, that was another good short, and that was the better one, and it was a nice move down. But after that, the next time we got up here, look how choppy and overlapping, and we did have the break by now. We tested that support area a few times, and but there never was a good setup to go long here. This bar was bearish. This bar was too long and too high, so there was really no good setup here unless you just bought blindly down here. Same thing off all these bars. Now this was a failed break lower, so that reversed, but by the time you could go long, this bar looks fairly bullish, but then you start getting all these dojis and there's not a lot of room. But this one was okay if you took this one. I didn't mark it, but this was the better trade. And you see prices moved on up during the day. I marked a couple of trades right at the open when we were in this congestion area right here at this high. And what we're really doing here, what prices are doing, are really pulling back and testing this breakout area from Friday afternoon. And we pulled down, and we came back and tried to test that. Couldn't go much higher. We got in this congestion. We broke lower. So that's a breakout pullback short with a nice bearish reversal type bar or hanging hammer or whatever you want to call it. That's really, I don't care much about what the names of these things are. All that matters is that prices closed on the very low after breaking one tick higher and trapping people and then immediately selling off. So if you saw that short, it was okay. Again, it's not a great setup. Look at all those overlapping bars. You see it didn't go very far, but it was good for a scalp. But this is really a pullback to test this breakout area right here. And you can see once we tested it twice, and then again, look how this bar came down here, but it closed almost on its very high. That's a good sign that we're probably going to go back and test this high. And look at that move up. So that was another good scalp. But we couldn't get any higher. This is basically a double top right here after a nice bearish leg down. So you figure we're going to get a measured leg. And let me just show you this. There's leg one. And there's your measured leg. And you can see we got pretty close. And you might even measure it like this since it's in the same overnight right there. Then you measure that and you see that's exactly where we got to. So it's a perfect measured leg off the move from today's trading, because this was actually the dividing line, so that was in the previous day's trading right there. So if you measure this leg down, you see we got almost a perfect measured move. Actually, it was right to the tick, I believe. Yeah, maybe one tick further. So you got to watch for these legs, and that will help. And so that was another clue. And what you never know is, are we going to make a measured leg back up like this one? And that's what you're looking for to possibly happen, putting prices up here, but it didn't. And when this double top held and we got this little breakout pullback short, here's your, it's hard to see it, but there's your double bottom, and then we broke lower and pulled back. And actually, if you're using your closes, remember I always teach you to use your closes. So we broke below that, and we pulled back and tested it, and it didn't hold, and then prices sold off. So that's a little small, that's a two-legged move with a little small breakout pullback short, and it's hard to see, I will admit. And even for me, it was hard to see. And I didn't really take it because of the breakout pullback. I noticed that after the fact. I took it simply because we had a double top at the top of a trading range, and I was looking for prices to test this area one more time, but turned out to be a good trade, and we came all the way down here and made a new low for the day. So you never know exactly what prices are going to do, but you just have to watch for the setups and look for more than one reason to enter and then take them. And this was a pretty good trade coming up here. We had prices actually broke lower first, and so that was a second entry short that failed and turned up. And so that was a nice trap. If you didn't enter here, you could have entered again here. So it was a little scary if you entered here where I entered, because prices broke lower first, and I thought I was going to get stopped out, but it's just a one tick trap is all it is. Then prices reversed and closed on the high. So you could have gone long right here too. I believe there was room to scalp out. It's getting a little bit more risky going long right there, even though you did have the trap. But I think there was enough room to scalp out. Let me just see. Your entry would have been about 66, and you got exactly, amazing how that works, huh? You got exactly enough, 5 ticks to scalp out. And generally that's what's going to happen on a trap. You're going to at least get that scalp. And they probably had to fight to get that last tick, and then immediately all those people were reversing, those same people that went long right there on that trap. Now you got them trapped at the top, and they reverse it and sell this thing off. And that was a pretty nice move down. And again, we were looking for a move similar to this move over here, and that's exactly what we got. And then we had, but even if you didn't see that, you had your trend line right here. You tested it several times, and you had your break, and we went lower. So this was a good short right here, and it's right at the trend line. It's also a double top. We've also broke a little bit higher, so you trap people, and that's generally what happens on range days. You can fade every new high and every new low. This was a new high. Look, if you faded it, here's a new low. Look what happened if you faded it. You had a nice two-legged move back. Here's another new low right here, because we had kind of a double bottom, and we had a new high if you'd have faded that. But generally on range days, and when I'm talking about ranges, I'm talking about when you get stuck in stuff like this. I'm not necessarily talking about, but we had all these overlapping bars. We broke out and failed. We tried it again. We broke lower. We failed. And that's generally what happens every time you make a new high or a new low off of a range. It generally fails, and it's just a chance to fade that failure. And like here's another. Look at all those matching lows. We broke lower, it failed, and look where prices went. They went higher. Of course, this was close to the close, and you probably don't want to be entering in here, but if you did, it was a good trade right before the close. So, but remember, it's just not wise to enter this late in the day. I just showed you that as an example. I'll be honest, I wouldn't be entering in the middle of the day right there, and we're probably going. Now we're breaking above this. We're either probably going to come up here and test this, or we may sell off here before it's over. This is in the overnight over there, so it's well after the regular market close, so that's overnight stuff over there. But generally, as you can see down here, this is all a trading range, and really your highs were probably more like right across here. You could have drawn them here, and you see the prices stalled there again. When they came back the next time, would have been a great little place to have a naked short right there and scalp out. And that's generally what happens every time you come back and test these strong areas. They're at least good for a scalp. But other than that, there just weren't a lot of entries today. And like I said, these were all suspect. This was the only really good trade because you're getting short at the high, and that's what you want to do. I had one student, I think they were getting long right in here and thinking that they had a trend up there. I'm not sure how they got their trend up through here. Maybe if you drew it right here, but still you got your break and your two legs up. So I'm not sure how he had his trend line. Maybe he drew them across like this or something, but it's usually your first couple of bars or the closes. I really drew mine like that, but even if you'd have drawn it off that low right there, that's really probably where it was, because you had your break right here and then your two legs up to a new high, and then prices sold off, and that's generally what the rule says to look for. Same thing right here. If you drew it off these first couple of swings, it would have given you this short and this short and this short, because that's the first break, and then boom, we sold off, had a little two-legged correction. We tried to sell off to make a second leg down, but that's good enough for to be a retest. We retested that area. We made a new low, then we retested it 1, 2, 3 times and couldn't get lower. So what's generally going to happen, then we're going to go higher, and we keep going higher until we get a failure. And so try to draw your trend lines. It's really hard. The one thing you're going to find when it's like this is it's really hard to find a trend line. And when you're having trouble finding these trend lines, that's telling you something. So you got to remember that. That's telling you that there's not really a trend, and really all this is a trading range. We had really a downtrend, but we spent more time in this range. Let's take this one off. In this range from, say, 5:30 this morning to a little after 9 o'clock, we were at from 63 to 66, a 3-point trading range. It's hard to make money in a 3-point trading range. Really, your best bet is to get long at the highs or long at the lows and short at the highs. That's your best bet. And then we had this nice sell-off, but what happened then? We just went in another trading range. We got it. It was a little larger right in here. Well, it really wasn't any larger. It was still 59 to 62. So, 2 or 3 points again. Just a little small trading range. And then what happened was a trading range. We had another sell-off, and all it did was work a little bit lower. And then your range was probably more like this right here. And really that covers the whole day almost. And so 59 to 62, maybe 61, 2 points. I mean, it's hard to make money. And I mean, I can remember the days when we'd get trends like this to the upside or downside that go for 20, 30 points. It just hasn't been happening. There's just not a lot of movement. This market is stale. And you can see if I crunch this up, how we've been in this area. Look, I mean, you're looking at the lows are around 58 and the highs are around 76, and it's like that all the way across here. And then you'll get one day where we move up a little or one day where we move down. But this whole range is from 34 to maybe 76. So about a 20-point range. That used to be good for a day. And, now that's a whole week's worth of trading or more. So there's just not much happening. And so keep that in mind and understand that, and be careful about entering unless you're getting long at the lows or getting short at the highs, where there's strong support or strong resistance. And then even the short-term trend lines, I'm showing you they work, and they're not always easy to. Of course, it's real easy for me to sit here and spot them after the fact. I'm not going to deny that. But what you've got to learn to do is spot them in real time. And really, if you get a first couple of bars, the first thing I would have done coming on this trend, let's pretend none of this is here today. Let me show you how I would find my trend line. This first trend line, I'd start off drawing it off my first couple of swings right there. And you can see that pretty much was good. It held prices. And, you know, using the closes, that worked. And that's pretty much it. But a lot of people will look at it like this right here, off those first two swings. And if you draw it off those first two swings, I'm going to get it perfect. It's even better trend line because, look, we broke it. We came back. We tested it. It couldn't go above it. We came back. We made that double bottom. We made the second leg up, and we finally got that new high just by a tick or two. But that's a trend line break and two swings to a new high. And if you just drew that off the first two swings, you had that. Now you're probably looking at this off the overnight. Well, there's that trend line. It's just really too steep, so it's not a real good trend line, but maybe you draw it like that. And look what happened. You had your break, your run down, and it still worked. But even if you didn't like that one, then you draw it off these swings. And you see, and you had your break, new low. So the trend line rules work. And are they easy to see? No. And if you're having a hard time finding a really good trend, then that's telling you that there's probably not a trend. And let me just show you this. I mean, it's obvious that's a pretty nice trend working up there. When you see that going for the whole day, and then again we went into congestion, I mean, it was just not any. That's a pretty good trend coming down there. But there's just not any real good trends. I mean, now that's a trend right there. That's what we used to see. I used to see a lot of that would go all day long just like that, about that angle, and go for 20, 30 points. It might do that 3 or 4 days in a row, but or it might be that same way down, but it's just not happening lately. So keep that in mind. I'm going to wrap this up. We're getting close to 17 minutes, and there really weren't even many trades today, so I was trying to keep this short, but I felt like it was probably worth trying to talk to people. I mean, you look at that. Here's another clue. Look how flat that EMA is. That's telling you that there's not really a trend. So be careful when that EMA is flat. And look how flat it is across here. And now you got a nice downsloping one here, and you got another nice downsloping one, but then they go flat, and that's just basically flat right there. And then finally you got one upsloping, and all the prices are getting above it, and that's a sign that the trend's moving back this way. So just keep an eye on that EMA and try to draw your trend lines. Make sure you draw your support and resistance. And don't be eager to enter the market until you get to a key entry point. I say that every day. And I know sometimes it's hard to determine where the key entry point is, but they're going to be at previous resistance areas, previous support areas, and at the trend lines during pullback. So I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and I'll see you tomorrow.